Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he walked through the dim corridors of Frontier 7. The mining station hummed quietly around him, its metal walls vibrating with the steady rhythm of the processing equipment. After 12 hours of fixing broken machinery, all Jake wanted was to grab some food and get some sleep. The storage bay door slid open with a soft hiss. Jake stepped inside and froze. Someone was moving around near his personal storage locker. In the pale blue light, he could see a small figure crouched over scattered food packages. "Hey," Jake called out. "What are you doing?" The figure spun around and Jake's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't human. The creature was about 4 feet tall with silver blue skin that seemed to shimmer in the artificial light. Large violet eyes stared at him with a mixture of fear and desperation. The being looked female, though Jake couldn't be sure. Her clothes were torn and dirty, barely holding together. She clutched a protein bar in her thin hands, her whole body trembling. Jake could see her ribs through the gaps in her clothing. She was starving. "Please," she whispered in broken English. "Please. No hurt, only food, only small food." Jake raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." He kept his voice calm and gentle. "What's your name?" The alien girl stared at him for a long moment, as if trying to decide whether to trust him. "Zira," she finally said. "Name is Zira." "I'm Jake." He took a small step closer. "Zira, how did you get here? This station is in the middle of nowhere." Zira's eyes filled with tears. She pointed toward a dark corner of the storage bay. "Others," she whispered. "Others need food. Very sick. Please help." Jake followed her pointing finger and saw something that made his heart skip. Hidden behind some cargo containers was a small alcove he'd never noticed before. 3 tiny forms lay there in the shadows, barely moving. They were children, even smaller than Zira, and they looked like they were dying. "Oh my God," Jake breathed. He knelt down beside the children. They were so thin he could see every bone in their faces. Their breathing was shallow and weak. "How long have you been here?" "Many days," Zira said, kneeling beside him. "Maybe 20, 30 days. Food gone long time. Children very sick now." Jake's mind raced. These weren't invaders or spies. They were refugees, survivors of something terrible. He looked at Zira's desperate face and made a decision that would change everything. "Wait here," he told her. "I'll be right back." Jake hurried to his quarters and grabbed all the food he had. Protein bars, dried fruit, water pouches, even some chocolate he'd been saving. When he returned to the storage bay, Zira was still there, holding one of the children in her arms. "Here," Jake said, offering her a water pouch. "Give them small sips first. Their stomachs need to get used to food again." Zira's eyes went wide with surprise. "You help us? Really help?" "Yes," Jake said simply. "I'm going to help you." Over the next hour, Jake watched as Zira carefully fed the children tiny amounts of food and water. She spoke to them in a musical language he didn't understand, her voice full of love and worry. Slowly, the children began to look a little better. Their eyes opened, and they managed to sit up. "Thank you," the smallest child whispered in English. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. "Thank you, human person." Jake felt his throat tighten with emotion. "What happened to you? Where did you come from?" Zira looked at him for a long moment, then began to speak. Her English was broken, but Jake could understand most of it. She told him about a planet far away, a beautiful world covered in crystal, cities and singing forests. She told him about her people, the Zilani, who lived in peace and spent their time creating art and studying the stars. Then she told him about the day the sky turned black. "They came from deep space," Zira said, her voice shaking. "Big ships, very many. We called them the Devourers. They eat everything. Plants, animals, people, everything." The children huddled closer to Zira as she spoke. Jake could see the terror in their eyes. "We had no weapons," Zira continued. "Zilani people never fight. We try to talk, try to make peace. But Devourers no talk. They only eat. Whole planet gone in few days. Billions of people all dead. Jake felt sick. How did you escape? I work with children, Zira said. When attacks start, I take children to old ship. Very old, very broken, but it fly. We escape but ship damaged. No food, no good air. We drift for many weeks before we find this place. Why didn't you ask for help? The station has people who could have helped you. Zira shook her head sadly. We try before at other places, but people scared of us, they think we dangerous. They lock us up, ask many questions, but no believe about devourers, so we run, hide. Jake understood. Humanity had encountered very few alien species, and most people were suspicious of strangers. These refugees had probably been treated like threats instead of victims. The devourers, Jake said carefully. Are they still out there? Zira's face went pale. Yes, they coming to this part of space. Maybe 6 months, maybe less. They eat everything in path. Your people need to know, need to prepare. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. If what Zira was saying was true, Earth and all its colonies were in terrible danger. But who would believe the word of an alien refugee? Who would listen to a warning from creatures most humans had never even seen before? He looked at Zira and the children, saw the hope in their eyes now that they had food and water. These beings had lost everything, but they were still trying to warn others about the danger coming. They were still trying to save lives. Zira, Jake said slowly, I believe you, and I'm going to help you warn my people. But we need to be careful. If we do this wrong, they might lock you up again. Zira nodded, tears streaming down her face. You really believe? You help us tell truth? I promise, Jake said. We're going to figure this out together. As he looked at the small group of survivors, Jake realized his life had just taken a completely different path. He was no longer just a maintenance worker on a remote mining station. He was now the bridge between two species and possibly the key to saving both of them. 3 days had passed since Jake first found Zira and the children. He had moved them to an abandoned section of the station where they would be safe from discovery. Every day he brought them food and medical supplies, watching as they slowly grew stronger. The youngest child, who told Jake her name was Kira, could now walk around without help. The 2 boys, Nex and Vel, were starting to laugh and play like normal children. But Zira still carried the weight of terrible memories in her violet eyes. Jake sat with her in the small room he had prepared for them, listening as she told him more about her world and her people. Her English was getting better each day, and the story she told painted a picture of a civilization unlike anything humans had ever imagined. Zilani people very different from humans, Zira explained, her hands moving gracefully as she spoke. We live for beauty, for learning. Our cities, made of crystal that sing in the wind. We grow food that tastes like music. We paint pictures with light itself. Jake tried to imagine such a world. It sounds incredible. How long did your civilization exist? Many thousands of years, Zira said. We spread to 7 worlds, all connected, by peace. We never fight wars. When we meet other species in space, we always try to be friends, to learn from each other. What about weapons, defenses? Zira shook her head. We have machines for mining, for building, but no weapons for fighting. Why would we need such things? We think all life is precious. Jake felt a growing sense of dread. Tell me more about the devourers. What exactly are they? Zira's face darkened. She was quiet for a long moment, watching the children play with some simple toys Jake had brought them. Finally, she began to speak. Devourers not like any life we know before. They come from far away, maybe from outside galaxy. They travel in great swarms, millions of ships moving, together like one giant creature. She stood up and walked to the small window that looked out into space. They not individuals like you and me. All connected, all think together. One mind controlling everything. A hive mind, Jake said. We have some creatures like that on Earth. Ants, bees. Yes, but much more terrible. Devourers eat all organic matter, plants, animals, people. They consume everything and use it to make more of themselves. More ships, more soldiers, more hunger. Jake joined her at the window. How do they fight? What kind of weapons do they have? Their ships are alive, Zira said, her voice barely above a whisper. Made from bones and flesh of creatures they have eaten, ships can heal themselves, change, shape, adapt to any attack. Devourer soldiers also alive, but not really alive. They feel no pain, no fear. They only know hunger. How many worlds have they destroyed? Hundreds, maybe thousands. They move through galaxy like a plague, leaving nothing behind. Empty worlds, dead systems, we try to count, but numbers too big. Jake felt his blood run cold. Have other species tried to fight them? What happened? Zira turned away from the window, tears in her eyes. Many try, some very powerful with great weapons and strong ships, but all fail. Devourers learn from each battle. They adapt. What kills them once will not kill them again. She walked over to where the children were playing and knelt down beside them. The architects of Vega had ships bigger than cities. Weapons that could destroy stars. They last 3 months. The war masters of Proxima had trained for battle for thousands of years. They last 2 months. Even the machine empire of Tau Ceti, with their perfect logic and endless armies, they last only 4 months. What makes the Devourers so hard to defeat? They not just destroy, they learn. Every species fights in patterns, follows rules of logic and strategy. Devourers study these patterns, then counter them. They turn strength into weakness. Jake sat down heavily. And they're coming here, to human space. Yes, Zira said sadly. We try to warn others as we travel. But most species not believe us, some too afraid to fight. Others think they too strong to be defeated. All wrong. How much time do we have? 6 months, maybe less. They move fast once they choose target. When they arrive, they send scout ships first, then small attacks to test defenses, then full, swarm. Jake rubbed his temples, trying to process everything. Zira, why are you telling me this? You could have just hidden here, kept your people safe. Zira looked at him with those large violet eyes. Because wrong to let others die when we can warn them. Even if humans not believe us, we must try, is what my people would want. But what can humans do that these other species couldn't? We're not as advanced as most of them sound. Zira tilted her head, considering his question. Maybe that good thing. Devourers expect certain kinds of fighting. They expect logic, patterns, rules, but humans... She paused, searching for the right words. Humans different. We study your transmissions during our journey. Your stories, your history. Humans do things that make no sense. What do you mean? Other species fight wars with mathematics. Calculate odds, surrender when defeat certain. But humans fight when they should not fight. Humans find ways to win that should not work. Humans... She smiled slightly. Humans cheat. Jake almost laughed despite the circumstances. That's our secret weapon? Cheating? Not cheating like lying. Cheating like changing rules. Doing things that enemy not expect because things not logical. Devourers very good at logic. Maybe not so good at... What word? Chaos? Young Kira looked up from her toys. Zira, always say humans are crazy people, she said in her small voice. But good crazy. Brave crazy. We learn about human wars from your signals, Nex added. He was older than Kira, maybe 10 years old. Humans sometimes win battles they supposed to lose. Sometimes humans save people they supposed to abandon. Vel, the quietest of the children, spoke up. Devourers eat many species that much stronger than humans, but no species quite like humans. Maybe that important. Jake felt a strange mix of hope and terror. So you think we might have a chance? Maybe, Zira said. But only if humans believe warning. Only if humans prepare right way. Cannot fight devourers like fighting normal enemy. Must think like humans, not like machines. Jake stood up, his mind racing with possibilities. I need to contact some people, friends who might be able to help get this information to the right authorities. Is dangerous, Zira warned. If humans react with fear, might try to lock us away again. I know, but we have to try. You said it yourself. It's wrong to let others die when we can warn them. Zira smiled at him, the first real smile he had seen from her. You sound like Zilani person. Maybe humans and Zilani not so different in heart. Jake moved toward the door, then stopped. Zira, there's something I need to know. If we do manage to warn Earth, if we do prepare for this fight, will you help us? Will you share everything you know about the Devourers? Of course, Zira said without hesitation. We already lose everything. But maybe together, humans and Zilani can save something. Maybe together, we can do what no species has done before. As Jake left the room, he carried with him the weight of an entire galaxy's future. The Devourers were coming, and humanity had 6 months to prepare for a war unlike any they had ever imagined. But for the first time since this nightmare began, Jake felt something he hadn't expected to feel. He felt hope. Jake stared at the communication console in his quarters, his finger hovering over the send button. The message he had written was the most important he would ever send, and he knew it could either save humanity or destroy his life. He had spent hours crafting the words carefully. Too dramatic and no one would believe him, too casual and no one would take it seriously. Finally, he had settled on something simple and direct. The message went to 2 people. Alex Carter, his best friend from academy training who now worked as a communications specialist on the orbital station New Haven, and his sister Lisa Martinez, a xenobiologist aboard the research vessel Aurora. If anyone would listen to him, it would be them. Jake pressed send and waited. 6 hours later, his console chimed with an incoming call. Alex's face appeared on the screen, his expression a mix of confusion and concern. Jake, what the hell is this message about alien refugees and galactic devourers? Are you feeling okay out there? I'm fine, Alex. And I know how crazy it sounds, but I need you to listen to me. Really listen. Jake spent the next hour telling Alex everything. He showed him video recordings he had made of Zira and the children, careful to hide their location. He played audio of Zira describing the Devourers, in her own words. Most importantly, he shared the detailed information Zira had provided about Devourer technology and tactics. Alex was quiet for a long time after Jake finished. Finally, he spoke. Jake, this is either the most elaborate hoax in history, or we're all about to die. It's not a hoax. I believe you. The question is, what do we do about it? You can't just walk into Earth Defense Command and say, hey, there's a girl eating your food who says space monsters are coming. Jake had been thinking about this problem for days. We need more credibility. We need other people to verify the information independently. Can you access the deep space monitoring networks? Not officially, but I have some friends who might be able to help. What am I looking for? Zira says. The Devourers destroy everything in their path. If we look at the sectors they've passed through, we should see dead systems. No radio signals, no heat signatures, nothing. Alex nodded slowly. That's actually brilliant. If these creatures are real, they should leave a trail of empty space behind them. Exactly. And Alex, there's something else. We need to contact Lisa. If Zira is right about humanity being different from other species, Lisa might be able to understand why. 2 days later, Jake's sister Lisa arrived at Frontier 7 aboard a small research shuttle. She was a tall woman with dark hair and intelligent eyes that reminded Jake of their father. She also brought with her Dr. Ben Clark, a military xenobiologist who specialized in alien threat assessment. Jake led them to the hidden section where Zira and the children were staying. Lisa gasped when she saw them, immediately switching into scientist mode. Fascinating, she murmured, taking out a handheld scanner. Jake, these beings are definitely not from Earth. Their cellular structure is completely different from anything in our databases. Zira submitted patiently to Lisa's scans, understanding that the humans needed proof of her claims. When Lisa was finished, Zira looked at her seriously. You are a scientist, yes? You study life? That's right, Lisa said. I study alien biology and evolution. Then you understand. Life is precious, life is rare. Devourers destroy life everywhere they go. This is wrong. Dr. Clark had been recording everything on his equipment. The linguistic patterns are consistent with what we would expect from an alien species learning human language, he said quietly to Lisa. Either this is real, or someone has created the most sophisticated hoax in human history. Over the next several hours, Zira shared everything she knew about devourer biology and behavior. She drew diagrams of their ships, described their reproduction cycles, and explained their tactical patterns. Dr. Clark asked detailed questions about their weaknesses and vulnerabilities. Every species has weaknesses, he said. What hurt them most when your people fought back? Zira shook her head sadly. Zilani people not fight. We try to hide, try to escape. But we watch others fight. Most species try to match devourer strength with strength. This not work. Devourers always adapt, always grow stronger. What about unconventional tactics? Lisa asked. Did any species try unusual approaches? Some try, Zira said. The crystal minds of Altair try to confuse devourer hive mind with complex mathematics. Work for short time, but they adapt. The storm riders of Vega try to outrun them with speed. Also, work for short time. Dr. Clark leaned forward. What about psychological warfare? Fear, confusion, unpredictability? Zira looked puzzled. What is psychological warfare? It's when you try to affect the enemy's mind instead of their body, Jake explained. Make them scared or confused or angry. Ah, Zira said, understanding. But devourers have one mind for all. Very hard to confuse or scare hive mind. They not feel fear like individual creatures. But they do learn and adapt, Lisa said thoughtfully. That means they have some kind of intelligence, some way of processing new information. Yes, Zira agreed. Very smart, but smart like machine. They see pattern, they counter pattern. Very logical. Dr. Clark and Lisa exchanged glances. Jake, Lisa said slowly, I think I understand what you meant about humans being different. What do you mean? Most alien species we've encountered so far have been very logical, very predictable. They follow clear patterns in their thinking and behavior. But humans? She smiled. Humans are chaos incarnate. We do things that make no logical sense. We take risks that any rational being would avoid. We fight when we should surrender, and surrender when we should fight. Dr. Clark nodded. Military history is full of battles won by commanders who broke every rule in the book. Tactics that worked precisely because they were so insane that no one expected them. Young Kira looked up from where she had been playing with some electronic components Jake had brought her. Zira says humans are like the trickster birds from our old stories. What are trickster birds? Jake asked. Zira smiled at the memory. Old Zilani stories tell of small birds that defeat huge monsters not with strength but with cleverness and chaos. They change direction when monster expects straight line. They sing when monster expects silence. They do opposite of what makes sense. And that worked in the stories? Lisa asked. Sometimes, Zira said. Not always, but more often than fighting with claws and teeth. Dr. Clark stood up and began pacing. This is starting to make sense. If the Devourers have adapted to defeat every logical military strategy, then maybe the key is to be completely illogical. That's all well and good in theory, Jake said, but how do we convince Earth Defense Command to base their strategy on alien fairy tales and human stubbornness? Alex's voice came through the communication system. He had been monitoring their conversation from New Haven Station. Actually, that might be easier than you think. I've been checking the deep space monitors like you suggested, Jake. I found something. The main screen in the room lit up with a star chart. Several solar systems were marked in red. These are systems that went dark in the last 2 years, Alex continued. No radio signals, no heat signatures, nothing. They form a clear path through space, heading directly toward our sector. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the screen. The evidence was undeniable. How long until they reach Earth? Dr. Clark asked quietly. Zira studied the chart carefully. If they maintain normal speed, maybe 5 months. If they detect humans and decide to move faster. She shrugged. Maybe 3 months. Dr. Clark activated his emergency communicator. This is Dr. Clark, authorization code 77 Alpha. I need to speak with Admiral Kane immediately, priority Alpha level. As they waited for the connection, Jake looked around the room at the strange group they had become. A maintenance worker, a communications specialist, a xenobiologist, a military expert, and 4 alien refugees. Not exactly what anyone would have expected to be humanity's first line of defense against a galactic threat. But as Zira had said, humans were different. Maybe being unexpected was exactly what they needed. Admiral Patricia Kane's stern face appeared on the screen. Dr. Clark, this had better be important. Admiral, Dr. Clark said calmly, I need you to sit down. We have a situation that's going to change everything. Admiral Patricia Kane stood in the observation deck of her flagship, the EDS Defender, staring out at the small mining station where everything had started. 3 weeks had passed since Dr. Clark's emergency call, and the galaxy had become a very different place. The initial meeting with Earth Defense Command had gone better than anyone expected. Kane was a practical woman who had spent 30 years in space. She had seen enough strange things to know that the universe was full of surprises. When faced with clear evidence of the dead solar systems and Zira's detailed knowledge of alien technology, she had made the decision to take the threat seriously. Now, Frontier 7 buzzed with activity. Engineers from across human space had arrived to study the Zilani children's damaged ship. Scientists interviewed Zira about everything she knew. Most importantly, Earth's greatest military minds worked around the clock to develop strategies for fighting an enemy, unlike any they had ever faced. Jake walked through the station's corridors, still amazed at how much had changed. He was no longer a simple maintenance worker. Admiral Kane had given him an official position as liaison to Zilani refugees, which mostly meant making sure Zira and the children were comfortable while they helped with the war effort. He found Zira in the main conference room, surrounded by holographic displays showing Devourer ship designs. She was working with Commander Steve Murphy, the head of tactical planning, explaining the details of how the creatures fought. Their ships grow stronger during battle, Zira was saying, pointing to different parts of the display. They absorb energy from weapons that hit them. Conventional attacks make them more dangerous, not less. Commander Murphy scratched his head. So the harder we hit them, the stronger they get? That's insane. Yes, Zira agreed. That's why every species loses. They use strongest weapons first, give Devourers more power to work with. What about weak attacks? Small weapons? Small weapons do little damage, but also give little energy. Problem is, small weapons not enough to stop them. Jake watched the frustration growing on Murphy's face. This was the same conversation he had witnessed dozens of times over the past weeks. Every conventional military strategy led to the same dead end. Admiral Kane entered the room, followed by Dr. Clark and Lisa. Any progress? She asked. Same as yesterday, Murphy said glumly. Every tactical scenario we run ends in defeat. These things are just too adaptable. Kane nodded grimly. The situation on Earth isn't much better. The civilian population is starting to panic. Word about the threat has leaked despite our security measures. Some colonies are already evacuating toward the outer rim. Maybe that's good, Zira said, quietly. Many people escape. Few people die. No, Kane said firmly. If we run, the Devourers will just follow us. They'll hunt down every human settlement in the galaxy. We have to make a stand here. Lisa had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. Admiral, I think we're approaching this wrong. What do you mean? We're trying to fight them like a conventional enemy, but Zira has told us repeatedly that conventional strategies don't work. Maybe we need to stop thinking like a military and start thinking like humans. Commander Murphy looked skeptical. What's the difference? Jake stepped forward. The difference is that militaries follow rules, humans break them. Kane raised an eyebrow. Explain. Lisa activated a new holographic display, this one showing human military history. Look at some of our greatest victories. Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans held off a massive army by choosing the worst possible place to fight. D-Day, where we attacked the most heavily defended coast in Europe. The Battle of Midway, where we won by gambling everything on a single desperate attack. Those were all good strategies, Murphy protested. No, they were terrible strategies, Lisa said. Any logical analysis would have predicted failure. They worked because they were so crazy that nobody expected them. Doctor, Clark nodded thoughtfully. I see what you're getting at. The Devourers have adapted to defeat logical strategies, but they might not be prepared for illogical ones. Exactly, Jake said. Zira, you said the Devourers learn by studying patterns. What if we don't follow any patterns? Zira looked puzzled. But how do you fight without patterns? How do you plan? Without logic? Kane smiled grimly. You've never seen humans at war, have you? Half the time we don't plan at all. We just make it up as we go along. Over the next several hours, the group began developing what they called the Chaos Protocol. Instead of creating a single master plan, they would prepare dozens of different strategies, each more unpredictable than the last. They would use weapons in ways they weren't designed for. They would attack when retreat made more sense and retreat when attack was expected. Young Nex had been listening quietly from the corner where he was playing with some engineering components. Suddenly he spoke up. Why not ask children for help? The adults turned to look at him. What do you mean? Kane asked. Children think different from grown-ups, Nex explained. Children think of things that adults not think of. Maybe children can find ways to fight that no one expects. Lisa's eyes lit up. That's actually brilliant. Children's minds work differently. They don't know what's supposed to be impossible. Within days, teams of human children were working alongside Zelani, refugees, brainstorming the most ridiculous, impossible, absolutely insane ways to fight a space battle. Their ideas ranged from the merely unconventional to the completely absurd. 8-year-old Jenny Cooper suggested using mining equipment as weapons. If their ships eat energy from guns, why not hit them with rocks? 10-year-old Matt Williams proposed having ships pretend to be dead, then come back to life when the Devourers got close. Like playing possum but in space. Little Kira, working with a group of human children, came up with the idea of ships that would split apart and rejoin in different combinations. Like puzzle pieces, but puzzle pieces that fight. At first, the military commanders dismissed most of these ideas as childish fantasies. But as they studied them more carefully, they began to realize that many of them might actually work. Jake found himself spending more time with the children's planning sessions than with the adult meetings. There was something refreshing about their approach to problem solving. They didn't worry about what was practical or possible. They just imagined what would be fun. You know what would be really funny? 12-year-old Amy Foster said during one session. If we made our ships look like something else. Like maybe they look like space rocks and then when the bad guys try to eat them, surprise. Vel looked up from his drawings. Zelani people have shape-changing metal. Very rare, but maybe some still work in our ship. Admiral Kane had been observing the session from the doorway. Shape-changing metal? Yes, Zira said, joining the conversation. Zelani artists use it for sculptures that change form. Very beautiful, but we never think to use for fighting. Could it make a ship look like something else? Maybe. If enough metal, if power systems work properly. Kane activated her communicator. Engineering team to conference room 7. We have a new project. As the weeks passed, the human fleet began to take shape in ways no one had ever imagined. Ships were equipped with mining lasers, construction tools, and agricultural equipment repurposed as weapons. Vessels were designed to break apart and recombine during battle. Some ships were built to look like asteroids, others like space debris. Most importantly, no two ships followed the same design principles. Each one was unique, unpredictable, and absolutely impossible according to conventional military thinking. Jake stood with Zira in the observation deck as the first squadron of these unusual ships departed for their positions near the edge of human space. The vessels looked more like a collection of spare parts than a military fleet. Do you think it will work? Jake asked. Zira watched the ships disappear into hyperspace. I not know. But for first time since devourers destroy my world, I think maybe there is hope. Why? She smiled at him. Because this fleet is most crazy thing I ever see. And crazy is exactly what Galaxy needs right now. Admiral Kane's voice echoed through the station's communication system. All hands, this is the Admiral. Long-range sensors have detected the Devourer advance fleet. They will reach our outer defenses in 72 hours. This is it, people. Time to show the Galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Jake felt his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and excitement. The greatest test in human history was about to begin, and they were going to face it with mining equipment, children's toys, and the most illogical military strategy ever conceived. Somehow, that felt exactly right. The first Devourer scout ships appeared on the edge of human space like drops of black oil against the stars. Jake watched from the bridge of the EDS Liberty, a ship that looked more like a mobile junkyard than a military vessel. Around him, the strangest fleet in galactic history prepared for the most important battle ever fought. Admiral Kane's voice crackled through the communication system from her command ship. All vessels, remember the plan. There is no plan. Fight like humans. Jake smiled despite his nervousness. After 3 months of preparation, those words had become their unofficial motto. Fight like humans. Be unpredictable. Break every rule. Zira stood beside him at the tactical display, wearing a human uniform that Admiral Kane had specially made for her. The Zalani had officially become humanity's first alien citizen, along with the 3 children who were safely aboard the command ship. Devourer scouts are scanning our fleet, reported Lieutenant Carol Davis from the sensor station. They're probably trying to understand our formations. Good luck with that, Jake muttered. The human ships were arranged in no formation at all. Some clustered together like they were hiding. Others spread out randomly. A few had positioned themselves to look like space debris. The first engagement began when Captain Roy Newman's ship, the Recycler, suddenly opened fire on what appeared to be an empty patch of space. His weapons were mining lasers designed for cutting asteroids, not fighting space battles. The invisible Devourer scout ship shimmered into view as its stealth systems failed. Contact, Newman's voice rang out. Ugly little sucker, but my mining beam is carving it up like cheese. The Devourer ship tried to adapt, its living hull rippling as it attempted to absorb the laser energy. But mining lasers worked differently from military weapons. Instead of explosive bursts of energy, they provided a steady, continuous beam designed to cut through rock. The alien ship couldn't process the constant low-level input fast enough. First kill goes to the miners, Kane announced as the scout ship broke apart, but the celebration was short-lived. Long-range sensors detected the main Devourer fleet approaching, thousands of ships, each one larger than a human cruiser, moving in perfect formation like a swarm of hungry insects. Here they come, Zira said quietly. This is how they always start. Small attack first, then bigger ones when they understand enemy patterns. The second wave of Devourer ships was larger and more aggressive. They came in fast, expecting to face conventional human military tactics. Instead, they encountered Captain Linda Hayes commanding a ship that was literally falling apart. The breakdown was designed to fragment during combat, splitting into dozens of smaller pieces that could operate independently. As the Devourer ships targeted what they thought was a single vessel, it suddenly became 20 separate fighters attacking from all directions. Surprise! Hayes laughed as her ship fragments swarmed around the confused aliens. Bet you didn't. See that coming? The Devourers tried to adapt, but each fragment fought differently. Some used construction tools as weapons, others rammed into their targets, a few just exploded, taking their enemies with them. Jake watched the battle unfold, on his screens, amazed at how well the chaos strategy was working. The Devourers kept trying to identify patterns in human behavior, but there weren't any patterns to find. Then the real test came. The Devourer mothership arrived. It was massive beyond imagination, a living city of bone and flesh that stretched for miles through space. Smaller ships emerged from its surface like antibodies from an infection, heading straight for Earth. All ships, this is Admiral Kane. Primary objective is now in sight. Remember, we're not trying to destroy it. We're trying to confuse it long enough for the real plan to work. Jake activated his ship's special systems. The Liberty was equipped with Zilani shape-changing metal that Vel had helped the engineers install. As he watched, his ship's hull began to shift and flow, transforming from a human vessel into something that looked like a massive space whale. All around the fleet, other ships were undergoing similar transformations. Some became giant flowers. Others looked like abstract sculptures. A few had been designed to resemble famous Earth landmarks. Captain Murphy's ship now looked exactly like the Statue of Liberty, complete with a torch that fired laser beams. The effect on the Devourer hive mind was immediate and devastating. These creatures had consumed thousands of species across the galaxy, but they had never encountered anything like this. Their scouts sent back data that made no sense. Ships that changed shape, weapons that behaved irrationally, humans who fought when they should retreat and retreated when they should fight. Jake, Zira said, pointing at her instruments. Look at Devourer communication patterns. They are confused. Jake studied the data flow between enemy ships. For the first time since the battle began, he could see hesitation in their movements. The perfect coordination was breaking down as individual ships received contradictory orders from the hive mind. Admiral Kane's voice cut through the chaos. This is it, people. Operation Trojan Horse is a go. Jake, you're up. Jake took a deep breath and guided his ship toward the massive mothership. The Liberty had been specially modified for this mission. Hidden in its hull was the most important cargo in human history, a complete database of human culture, art, music, literature, and most importantly, human illogic. The plan was insane, which made it perfect. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer, hive mind, they were going to try to drive it crazy. As Jake approached the mothership, defensive systems targeted his ship. But the Liberty looked like a space whale, moved like a wounded animal, and transmitted signals that sounded like whale songs. The Devourer systems designed to recognize threats couldn't decide what to do with it. I'm through their outer defenses, Jake reported. Beginning upload sequence. The plan had been Kira's idea, refined by human engineers and Zilani technicians. If the Devourers learned by absorbing information, then they would feed them information they couldn't process. Human creativity, human chaos, human illogic, all compressed into a data stream designed to overload any system that tried to understand it. Jake initiated the upload and watched as terabytes of pure human weirdness flooded into the mothership systems. Music that followed no mathematical patterns, art that meant different things to different people, stories that ended without resolution, mathematical proofs that were technically correct but made no practical sense. The effect was immediate. The mothership began to shudder as its hive mind tried to process concepts like jazz music, abstract art, and the ending of the movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey. Throughout the Devourer fleet, ships began moving erratically. The perfect coordination that had destroyed thousands of civilizations started to break down as the hive mind experienced something it had never encountered before: creative confusion. It's working, Lisa's voice came through from the command ship. Their neural network is cascading into multiple feedback loops. They're trying to understand why humans paint pictures that look like nothing and write songs about feeling sad when they're happy. But Jake's mission wasn't over. The final part of the plan required him to get inside the mothership itself. Using the Liberty's shape-changing abilities, he formed a breach in the hull and squeezed through into the creature's interior. Inside the mothership was like being inside a living organ. Walls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Corridors shifted and changed direction without warning. And everywhere, Jake could hear the sound of the hive mind struggling to process human culture. He made his way to what sensors indicated was the central processing core. There, floating in a chamber filled with organic computing material, he placed the final payload, a simple music box that played Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. It was Zira's suggestion, based on something Kira had said about how the simplest, Human things were often the most incomprehensible to alien minds. A children's song, played on a mechanical device with lyrics that asked questions about the nature of the universe, but expected no answers. The hive mind tried to analyze the music box to understand its purpose and meaning, but there was nothing to understand. It was just a toy that played a simple song because humans thought it was nice. For a consciousness that had conquered galaxies through pure logic, this was incomprehensible. Jake felt the mothership beginning to shake apart around him as the hive mind experienced something like a massive stroke. He ran for his ship as corridors collapsed and systems failed throughout the vessel. The Liberty burst free of the mothership just as it began to tear itself apart. Around them, the entire Devourer fleet was falling into chaos. Ships collided with each other. Others simply stopped moving altogether. A few tried to retreat, but their navigation systems were too damaged to find their way home. "This is Admiral Kane to all ships. The enemy fleet is in full retreat. I repeat, the Devourers are running away." Jake slumped in his pilot's chair as the adrenaline finally wore off. Through his view screen, he could see the massive mothership breaking apart, its bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying. "We did it," he whispered. "We actually did it." Zira put her hand on his shoulder. "You did something no species in galaxy has ever done. You made Devourers afraid." Afraid of what? Afraid of not understanding. For creatures that think they know,